It's May 12th, 2019, Scotiabank Arena, Sixers versus Raptors. A low-scoring game that has come down to the wire when it seemed like Toronto all but had this one in their grasp. With 4.2 seconds left on the clock, the Raptors look to break the tie and advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. If the Sixers make a stop, the game will go to overtime, where anything can happen. The energy in this arena is electric, the suspense and buildup is uncanny, with both teams facing a lot of risk if they lose this series. Before we witness this moment, let's examine the history of this building, the distinctive players on the floor, and how we got here in the first place. Let's rewind. No score on this possession means overtime, and with a team with as many options as the Sixers, that's not a risk you'd like to take. It wasn't all roses and peaches for Philly though. Just a few months ago, they got blown out on opening night against the Boston Celtics, resembling the hard, cold facts. They were simply the little brothers of the Eastern Conference. Just a few years ago, they were sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, 10 wins, with no deep playoff run in sight. The true beginnings for the team we see here started in the 2014 draft, where the Sixers chose Joel Embiid with the 3rd pick. In 2016, they chose Ben Simmons at the number 1 spot, those two becoming the duo of their future. With the Raptors, it wasn't exactly the same. Their previous franchise player, DeMar DeRozan, was drafted in 2009, and Lowry was traded to them in 2012. They were Toronto's duo of the future, or so we thought. Their real contending began in the 2015-2016 season, where they earned the 2nd seed with a 56-win season. They then beat the Paul George-led Pacers in 7 in the first round, then once again went to 7 in a hard-fought, thriller series against D-Wade and the Heat that included a half-court buzzer beater by Kyle Lowry that forced Game 1 to overtime. They lost this game, but man was that cool. Unfortunately, their magic run was put to a screeching halt against LeBron and the Cavs, where they lost in 6. A tough ending, but a bright future that was even more highlighted with the draft selection of future All-Star Pascal Siakam in 2016. The late first-round pick wouldn't blossom just yet, but would be a huge part in this 2019 series. At this point in 2016, both teams were going in different directions. Philly had no intentions of making the playoffs just yet, and were more focused on their young core, which included players like Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and Dario Saric. Toronto, on the other hand, had full intention of a finals appearance. They believed in this core of players and would continue trying for as long as they could. A tough defeat to the eventual champion Cavs wouldn't discourage them just yet. 2016-17 began with the Sixers finally getting to see the debut of Joel Embiid after he missed the first 2 seasons of his career with injury, and he did not disappoint. He almost immediately asserted himself as one of the best young players in the league, with averages of 20 points per game and 8 rebounds. Embiid not only showed that he was the real deal, but that he was a winner. At some points, the Sixers looked like a playoff team when he was on the court. On the north side, the Raptors looked to build off of what had been their longest playoff run in their franchise's history, with Lowry and DeMar continuing to develop. They entered the 2017 playoffs with swagger to their name. Beating the Bucks, led by a young Giannis, helped kickstart what should be a long playoff run. Yup, that's right, there definitely won't be a 6'8" kid from Akron ready to destroy their dreams. The Raptors entered the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Cleveland Cavaliers, the defending champions, the team that beat them the previous year. And once again, the Raptors lost. They didn't just lose, but got swept. Embarrassingly. You'll notice a pattern here. It was a disappointment of an exit for Toronto, even worse than the previous year, but still, there was a budding hope that things would change. They had an excellent bench and a well-rounded team as a whole. They just needed players like DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry to take that next step come playoff time, because so far, they failed. For the Sixers, the expectations were that much lower, while the Raptors were being scrutinized for yet another playoff loss to LeBron and the Cavs. Philly was being praised because they just got the #1 pick in a stacked 2017 draft class, looking to add that third piece in Markelle Fultz to their already loaded core of Embiid, Dario, and Ben Simmons. Ben hadn't played at all thus far, and Embiid, while having a smashing rookie season, only played 33 games out of 82, so the young core of Philly actually needed to play before the expectations came. And play they did, as the 2017-18 season kicked off with Ben Simmons smashing expectations, becoming the runaway Rookie of the Year, and showing the world his remarkable playmaking, passing ability, defense, and finishing. Embiid continued to improve, averaging 23 and 11, showing that he was one of the best bigs in the league. Not everything was bright and sunny in the city of brotherly love though. #1 pick Markelle Fultz lost all of his shooting upon entering the league, and wouldn't be regaining it in a Sixers uniform for whatever reason, which opened up the thought, do the Sixers need a third star? Or are Embiid and Simmons good enough? This idea wouldn't be taken as seriously just yet, but soon enough, it would be, as Philly, a team with finals expectations by some, got crushed by the undermanned Boston Celtics in the second round. The C's were led by rookie Jason Tatum, who Philly passed on to select Markelle Fultz. Tatum was dropping buckets as Markelle was getting DMPs and sitting on the bench. Philly lost in 5, a disappointing exit, but the future seemed bright in Philly. With a bit of development to Ben Simmons and his offense, Markelle Fultz figuring it out, Joel Embiid continuing to grow, the Sixers had a chance to be a consistent title contender. Back to Toronto, the Raptors had an incredible regular season, winning 59 games, their best win total in franchise history, so as you could assume, the expectations were monolithic levels of high. Would Coach of the Year winner Dwayne Casey prove he could lead this stacked roster to the title? Would DeMar DeRozan show he could hang with some of the best in the league and play up to playoff expectations? Would Kyle Lowry rid of that infamous playoff choker tag that has haunted him for the past few seasons? The answers to those questions would be formed very, very quickly, as the Raptors once again made it to the second round and squared off against LeBron James and the Cavs. This Cavs team, more specifically LeBron, had been haunting this Raptors franchise for years now. They lost to them in 6 in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2016, then got swept by them the next year in the Eastern Conference semis, but still, despite the epic failure that has been bestowed on this franchise by one man, still, there was hope. This wasn't just any Raptors squad. The most wins in franchise history, clear-cut #1 seed, home court advantage, and remember, this Cavs team was depleted. No second star in Kyrie Irving. Everyone outside of LeBron James was iffy. So it made you think, could it be? Could the Raptors get revenge and make their way to the finals? No. No on every account. For the second straight year, the Raptors were utterly dominated by the Cleveland Cavaliers. Not just dominated, but absolutely humiliated on live television. It's even worse considering this wasn't just the usual Kyrie and LeBron. No, this was simply LeBron and his bandit of average to below average role players. The Cavs really had no business beating them as swiftly and quickly as they did. Without LeBron, this Cavs team is in the lottery. The Raptors got swept, DeMar DeRozan choked, and in usual embarrassing fashion, the North was the laughingstock of the NBA for months. At this very moment, the Raptors could have easily kept that same roster and ran it back the next season. After all, LeBron was on his way to the West, and maybe this shameful series outcome can motivate DeMar DeRozan to step it up next time. Well, we'll never know what would have happened because in the summer of 2018, the Raptors traded DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a future first-round pick for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. An absolute shock of a trade at the time that came with an incredible amount of risk. Kawhi was a free agent following the next season, which means that if the Raptors face yet another disappointing playoff exit, Kawhi could simply leave and leave the North in flames. Not to mention, he'd miss most of the previous season due to ankle problems as well as other issues, so the question of would he be the same rose up. They also fired head coach of the year winner Dwayne Casey and hired rookie head coach Nick Nurse. Yet another risk, firing an established guy for a rookie. Head GM Masai Ujiri was putting his job on the line. Everything that the franchise had worked for, with all of the pieces, all of the development, it would all be tested in what could be their only chance at a title run. Both teams entered this season with high expectations. For Philly, it was their time to show that they could hang with the top teams of the East. And for the Raptors, it was finals or bust. Two notable early season games for these teams were when the Sixers faced off against the Celtics on opening night, getting absolutely blown out and only starting the season with a measly 6-5 record. And to rookie GM Elton Brand, change was needed and change would be made. For the Raptors, they started out with an incredible 12-1 record, their most notable game being a matchup against the Celtics where they dominated down the stretch, showing that they were legit. Kawhi looked awesome, Kyle Lowry somehow got better, their bench looked dominant, and rookie head coach Nick Nurse was asserting himself as one of the best coaches in the league. The Sixers ended up making two major trades, essentially giving up a lot of their future to win now, trading for Minnesota guard Jimmy Butler and Clippers forward Tobias Harris. Jimmy being a surefire all-star caliber player, and Tobias having an all-star type season, averaging 20 points per game on 43% three-point shooting. Two worthy additions to the squad, but at the cost of a lot of the Sixers' bench and depth, showing that they were all in for now. This was their season and they weren't going to waste any time. Joel Embiid improved to a 27-13 player, arguably the best center in the league, and Ben Simmons was an all-star. The Raptors faced the Sixers 4 times in the regular season, winning the season series 3-1, but with all of the roster shifting from Philly, you couldn't really use that as a fair argument for which team was better. Toronto finished the season with a record of 58-24, just one win shy from the prior year. Their team was stacked, as Kawhi averaged 26 points per game. Everything about their team screamed contender, from their depth to their coaching, their elite front office and star talent. Could this finally be their year? Players like Fred VanVleet, Serge Ibaka, Danny Green all stepped up throughout the season. Even Pascal Siakam, that late lottery pick we mentioned in the past, had become a bona fide star talent. Marc Gasol would be incredibly useful as well. Acquired in a mid-season trade, Gasol would provide excellent defense against some of the best big men in the league, including one man from Cameroon. Kyle Lowry had continued to somehow improve despite being 33 years old. This team was more than just Kawhi. They ran deep. Everyone on their squad was a threat of some sort. The city of brotherly love had something to say about that, with their stacked Big Four, led by Jimmy Butler and Joel Embiid. Philly had so many options, you just didn't know who could burn you. Would it be Jimmy Butler with his late game heroics, excellent finishing and defense? Would it be Joel Embiid with his dominant postgame, smooth three-point shooting and interior defense? How about Ben Simmons with his electric perimeter defense? Or Tobias with his elite catch and shoot three-point game? Those factors combined with the shooting of JJ Redick made their starting five one of the best we've ever seen. It was pick your poison, and Philly was ready. Before we could see a clash of these two titans, both squads had a bit of trouble in their first round series. The Raptors lost game 1 against the Orlando Magic due to a DJ Augustine game winner, one that sent shockwaves through the NBA community. Would it be more of the same playoff disappointment for Toronto? Kyle Lowry had 0 points this game as well, adding more ammo to the narrative that he was a playoff choker. For Philly, the game was much different. It wasn't just a game winner that handed them the L. No, they got dominated at home by the Brooklyn Nets, led by D'Angelo Russell. This loss led to many questions as well. Was Brett Brown even a playoff coach? His team looked incredibly unprepared. Would Ben Simmons and his lack of a jump shot screw the Sixers over for the second straight year? Those questions turned out to be overreactions though, as both teams won the next 4 straight games and advanced to the second round. But for the Sixers, a very close Game 4 victory that could have gone either way, plus that Game 1 loss, made you think, were they really on Toronto's caliber? The Sixers and Raptors square off in Game 1 on April 27th, 2019, and Toronto absolutely destroyed Philadelphia.
Siakam a 3. He would have been a factor in the rotation. Leonard turns. Oh, ridiculous! Kawhi Leonard!
Many were writing the series off already. Philly didn't even stand a chance against the mighty Kawhi Leonard, who dropped bucket after bucket in Jimmy Butler's grill with 45 points. It was utter domination from the very start. Game 2 began, and immediately you could tell things were different.
Embiid forced to kick it out. Butler, count it! 3 and the foul! Troubles. Simmons right down the middle for 2. Butler. Jimmy buckets!
Philly looked sharp. Their defense was scrappy, and it was back and forth. Both teams refusing to let up, all the way until the final few minutes. Jimmy Butler turned into Michael Jordan. Joel Embiid went full Hakeem, and with a good defensive possession to shut the Raptors out, this series was tied at 1 game apiece.
The rim! Gasol keeps it alive, knocked around. Harris has got it for Philadelphia. They have to foul.
At this point, fans didn't know what to think. We were so sure Toronto had this series thanks to a dominant Game 1. But in Game 2, Philly showed just how much talent they really have. You didn't know who could beat you. They just had so many options. This next matchup would surely show us which team is for real. And as the hostile crowd of Philly began cheering, Game 3 began, and the Sixers blew the doors off of the Raptors.
Embiid fakes a 3, and it's a 3. Back up top. Here's Butler. Butler in on 2. Embiid fakes, Embiid down the lane.
The defining moment of the process. All of that losing, all of that hope, it all came down to these moments, and what better way to celebrate a blowout win than an Embiid windmill dunk. followed by an airplane celebration as Wells Fargo Center was destroyed with screaming. Everybody for the Sixers played well. Embiid had 33, Jimmy had 22. The narrative had switched. The Sixers were no longer worse than Toronto, they were that much better. How could Toronto stop the almighty Big Four? It was Game 4 in Philadelphia once again, and it was do or die for the Raptors. Their season was in the hands of how they performed this game. Lose and you go down 3-1 to a hungry Philadelphia team with immense star power. It was a must-win, and Kawhi Leonard took that personally, dropping 39 points, including this tough dagger shot to put the Sixers away as the Raptors won 101-96. A heartbreaking loss for the Sixers, but an incredible win for Toronto. What once looked like a series in Philly's favor was now tied as we head back to Scotiabank Arena. With the series tied at 2, fans didn't know what to think. Yeah, the Sixers had a stacked starting lineup, but Embiid had only played well one time so far in the series. Jimmy was carrying the load, while Tobias and Ben were quiet throughout many stretches. Would this be enough to dethrone Kawhi Leonard, a guy who had been having an all-time incredible playoff run? Game 5 in Toronto would answer some of those questions in an embarrassing manner.
Knocked out of there by Siakam. Now it's a foot race. Lowry takes it in. It's an eccentric.
In this game.
Just the 5th shot of the night. Leonard!
Remaining.
Bye-bye Philly. This series was over. That's what many thought after this disgustingly bad performance by the Sixers, where Kawhi and company destroyed them at home. A repeat of Game 1, only this time Toronto needed just one more victory to head to the Eastern Conference Finals. It was time to close it out in Philadelphia, put out these annoying Sixers. Only one thing, Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler, well, they weren't finished just yet.
Butler's going to take this one short, chases it down, is fouled,
The Sixers convincingly took Game 6, behind Jimmy's 25, Ben's 21, and holding Kawhi Leonard to only 29 points, which was a huge achievement considering how incredibly dominant he's been in this series. We as fans didn't know who to pick for Game 7. Every time it seems like one team has the edge, the other side strikes back. Who's gonna win? It's May 12th, 2019, Scotiabank Arena. Sixers versus Raptors. An incredible crowd prepares to see what should be a thriller, and it was. Both teams struggled to score, especially in the first quarter. Philly only scoring 13 points as a unit total in the first 12 minutes, with a 46-41 lead for Toronto at the end of the first half. The biggest flaw for the Sixers had to be their lack of a backup center. You gave up all of these assets for Jimmy and Tobias, yet along the way, you forgot one of the most important spots for your team. Throughout this series, every time Embiid was subbed out, the Raptors feasted in the paint. Despite all of that, this game was incredibly close for all 48 minutes, and with 3.5 minutes remaining, JJ Redick hit this huge and 1 2-pointer to tie it at 85 apiece, where it remained tied for 2 minutes up until this huge Kawhi Leonard 2-pointer broke it.
9, 3, Leonard, good! What a shot! 39 for Kawhi Leonard!
What many forget about these final minutes were the Sixers' inability to score down the stretch. 3 straight shot clock violations, which can be accredited to not only poor coaching of Brett Brown, but to the Raptors' all-time incredible defense. Lowry intercepts this Tobias Harris pass with just under a minute left, and Siakam, who's been a huge factor this series, finishes it over Jimmy to put the North up by 4. As a fan, I thought this would be the dagger, but with Jimmy Butler splitting free throws and Embiid nailing 2 from the line after drawing a foul with 12 seconds left, it was an 89-88 Raptors lead as Kawhi got fouled by JJ Redick. Kawhi, who's been absolutely legendary, all-time levels of good this series, just had to hit both free throws and rely on Toronto's fantastic defense to get one more stop and close this out. Leonard made the first, but missed the second, and swiftly, the Sixers executed in transition, finishing off with a Jimmy Butler right-handed layup to tie it at 90 points apiece.
He ties the game!
Jimmy Buckets had done it again! He's been so clutch throughout this series, and he's shown it once again in a prime-time Game 7. Raptors fans were shocked. It looked like just a minute ago that they had this in the bag, but with some missed free throws and a bit of luck, the Sixers had tied it. If the Raptors can't execute, we'd be going to overtime, where Philly had tons of momentum. It could be anyone's game and would be the difference between a championship and sitting at home. Everything came down to this final possession. Every moment of the season, every blockbuster trade, every playoff failure that both teams had experienced these past few years, it all came down to this. Welcome to a moment in history.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger? Game! Series! Toronto has won!
Toronto ended up winning their first ever championship. Kawhi left them in free agency, and the Sixers never had the same team ever again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and thanks to Secret Base for the inspiration on this video.